pleasure to introduce another good friend of mine, Mike Pananen, the master of puppets. Mike is perfect for his job as an automation engineer because he's just lazy enough to really want to not do his job. He is one of the brightest guys in sensor stack management, and I have personal knowledge that he's managed some of the largest sensors in the United States, sensor grids. In addition to speaking here, he will hopefully be speaking and possibly teaching at BroCon 2014, right, Mike?
Yeah, probably.
And at the Puppet Conference in San Francisco. So when the tool maker starts looking at what you're doing as a great example, I think that you're really firing on all cylinders. So let's give a warm introduction to Mike Pananen.
All right, so that's me. I like to ride dirt bikes and have fun. Here's my Twitter and all that stuff. I publish some modules on the Puppet Forge, and you see the Forge Puppet Labs. One of the modules I actually published and released to the public is my Bro module. So you can actually you can install Bro with Puppet with my module straight from there. I got GitHub. Hopefully I will actually upload some of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you later on to my GitHub too. All right, why automate? It makes things easy. One thing that I've really noticed is it lets you concentrate on bigger problems. I mean, why would you want to, create users, modify a host file, edit, resolve.conf, or just miscellaneous mundane tasks. It really makes life a lot faster and easier if you just automate everything and you can concentrate on the bigger issues, like how do I design an Arista with something else and all this crazy other stuff instead of like doing mundane work. And Puppet and any automation tool is really good for that. Why did I choose Puppet? It's it has a large community. I started using Puppet in 2011. When I first was hired onto a company to basically make NSM sensors basically, and I was doing it all by hand, and it was taking me like 4 hours to make one. And a lot of it was just the mundane stuff I just talked about. But I mean, Puppet solved that problem for me. When I was done, I basically was building sensors in like 8 minutes with Puppet. And it keeps things very, streamlined too. Like sensor A will be like sensor B. Another thing that's really great about Puppet is the stored configs. So it has like an external database, and you can have one node update another node. And where it really came in handy for me was when you're managing like 450 sensors, you can't remember like IP addresses, where is it located, what country is it in, and all that kind of stuff. I actually had it so it was automated, and it wrote it to a website and kind of gave me a big inventory. And this is my store configs. But so that's what I was talking about. Node A goes to node B. This is actually the thing I wrote. I call it inventory, and this is like my little inventory system that Puppet uses. You can do it a number of different ways, but this is one of the tools I did. And this is actually in my GitHub. It's not in the Puppet Forge because it's still a little, I call it, alpha stages right now, but it works. Yep, so for the base of Puppet, so I don't know how many people have ever used Puppet. So Puppet's like basically a very modular platform. It has a directory structure and different kinds of templates and files. The ERB templates are very Ruby like. So you can actually do if statements and different things like that to kind of change your config files. It has a lot of resource types, but these three, package, service, and file, you can do a lot with these. There's other ones such as like Augius and other tools like that that Puppet can use, but package, you can basically ensure things are installed. So I want to, I want to ensure Snort's installed. The best way to go about it too with using packages is use a repo. So I would have a custom repo of my own, with my own packages built in it for pfring, bro, snort, netsnifng, tools like that. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with those, but besides bro, because Liam just talked about it. But you really want to have your own repo when using Puppet. Puppet really works really well installing native packages like RPMs and Debian packages or whatever you're gonna do it on. So here is a little bit of Puppet code. So you can see where I am actually ensuring the package snort is going to be present. And then the little arrows actually say install the package snort before I'm going to configure the snort.conf. So then the snort.conf is actually an ERB file, which can have some Ruby code in there and if statements. So I can be like, I can have a field that's a variable that says this is my home net on this sensor, but this next sensor has a different home net. So it will fill the field in on the snort.conf. And then the rules. And you can also notify like services and things like that. I'll show you more of that in a bit. So there's different ways you can ensure your package. One of the biggest things is ensuring, I did this a lot, was ensure the version. So when you go to upgrade a package, it really helps out.
I'm just going to move your mic just a little bit here. Thank you.
So when you're managing custom packages like Snort or, I know you can download them, but if you're managing custom ones and you want to ensure that version's on there, and you have like 13, or let's say you have, you're making a new one and you want to just test it on one sensor, you can ensure a version. So I would, say a new version of Snort came out, I would just change that and I would test it on one sensor, make sure everything works before you go, blowing up your entire sensor grid with a, say Snort was buggy or something didn't work, or it didn't work with your rules or whatever. It's a really good feature. And you can do that with any package though. So the notify and subscribe. This is a nice feature with Puppet. What it can do is it can restart the service. So let's say say I have a package or a file even. So like the snort.conf. If I had the service subscribe to snort.conf, when snort.conf changes, Snort will restart. That makes things great because you change a config file or something like that for not even just Snort, anything, even Apache or whatever you're doing. But yeah, it automates things. You can't. I mean, you got to do this with 400 things. Even like a thresholds.conf and Snort. I'm sure people have played with Snort and changed the threshold.conf. You got to do it even like 20 sensors or something like that. That would stink doing it by hand. You do it with Puppet, it just does it automatically. So I did this a lot too. We would control the state of our sensors a lot. So when we put out brand new sensors a lot, I'd make sure they're all stopped, because the taps aren't plugged in or whatever like that. And it's basically like turning a light switch on. You just change that word from stop to running, and guess what? The thing's logging, sending alerts to wherever you want to send them to, whether it's Elasticsearch, Splunk, Squeal, whatever. Works really well. So file sources. This is basically copies a raw. So if you have a config file, let's say, well, for example, we'll use snort.conf instead of that one. But and it's just a straight snort.conf, and you edit it the way you want it, and you want it on all your sensors. This using the source parameter will actually copy the actual file the way it is over on your sensors. That's a little bit different than the ERB files I was talking earlier, which are templates. You can also do things like purge directories, and I'll get to that in a minute. Hold on. So this is more right here is what I was talking about on the ERB files. So you can actually specify variables, and it's basically Ruby. So the var boo would be in my manifest, the Puppet manifest, and then the @var and the whole, boo, else, put b, end. That is in your template, your ERB file. So you could be like, if system has this much RAM, put cache at whatever. A lot of uses for if statements, of course. Here's another example of using file content, which I use this in a PFRing. So I'll actually do an init file, and actually I expand a little bit more in this, but in this example, you can see I'm using mode 0, and then when it writes out to the actual file on the sensor, it will actually put 0. And I can change that. Let's say I wanted to do mode 1, or for some weird reason on a different sensor, I could specify that per sensor too. Now this is another provider that Puppet has. It's got, everyone's heard of it. A lot of people who use Unix or Linux know what Augeus is. But you can do a lot. It's very flexible, the Puppet Augeus provider, because you can actually, instead of using a template, you can change things. Like I can just change one line in SSH config and say, like, permit root login no. I can add a group, say this group is only allowed SSH, etc. Things like that. And you can see where you can have it require something. That's kind of like when I was doing the arrows earlier. The require is another way to do that. And so it requires that package. And also you can see it'll notify the service. So if I edit sshd.conf, it will actually restart SSH when it's done. So the purge feature, this is really a really cool feature, I think. And I think it's very underutilized. A lot of people, I think, that use Puppet don't use it the way I use it. I kind of use it to lock down things a lot. So on a sensor or something, I can use this feature to ensure users. So in a demo I'll show you in a little bit, I can actually like change a password or give the games account a bash login with a password. Run Puppet, and Puppet will change it all back to no login and no password. Or I can add a user, and Puppet will just delete it. Things like that. Files in a directory. Say I don't want a file in a directory. It's a web directory or just whatever, any kind of directory. I can have Puppet just say, if there's a file that it doesn't know about, it will delete it. It's gone. So the exec framework. This is kind of cool. So this is something very useful when Puppet doesn't have like a native way to do something. It's kind of like, I call it the hacked way to do something. So if I can't make it work with Puppet very easily, I will write maybe like a bash script or something like that. And I'll have Puppet just execute my bash script. And I do that a lot on some things, depending on what they are. I think you don't want to replace bash and replace Puppet with Bash. Replace Bash with Puppet. So it's better to actually make like a whole script to do something and have Puppet just execute one time than execute like a bunch of little things, like Bash commands. So in this example, rebooting stuff, I would match reboot sensors for updates or whatever. And this is kind of a way I would do it. So Hyra is kind of a way to say, on FreeBSD, the sudoers D directory is in user local etc. On CentOS, it's in etc. So the whole operating system part, I can put a YAML file that says FreeBSD.yaml, and I can put, that sudoers file is here for FreeBSD, and then I'll make a one for CentOS and say it's here for that. That's just one small example, but that's what it's really good for. And also, you can see the very top one will win. So in this example, I have the client cert, which is the node. Think of nodes as like servers. So if I have a variable in the node client cert, that overrides the operating system. And if I have, you can have more hierarchy. I could have another thing that says, is it virtual? Is this a virtual machine? Or is it real hardware? There's facts for that. And this is all fact-based. So in the top one wins. So if I have, let's say I have, let me get a good example. Let's say this is my default gateway or something like that, and I want to put it in so every node would have a different, could possibly have a different, value for that, where I don't want to have it in like the operating system one. All right, so I want to actually, I can talk about this all day, but if you don't see it in action, it's hard to explain. So I'm going to actually have to disconnect for a second here. Let's see if I get my Wi-Fi up. All right, we're on. Let's see if I get this. All right. Get my chat window out. See that? All right. So I set up some, basically some demos of Puppet actually in action, and I set up a demo Puppet environment just for this. See, so like what I just did, that's horrible. Who uses? No one uses passwords these days. Passwords are horrible. So this is basically a CentOS minimal installation. Oops. With you know, no users or anything configured besides, you know, default system ones, and nothing in home. I have a few directories. I got my awesome directory, my NSM, temp, boot, the standard Linux stuff. Everyone's got an awesome directory. So what I'm going to do, first, this is basically a fresh install. All I did was yum install Puppet. That's all I've done on this box so far, and edit a host file and put an IP address on it. So I want to get my user on here. So I've actually set up, you know, some pre-configured stuff, but hey, that's not supposed to happen. Try this again. The Puppet already had a key for it. Puppet uses SSL keys, so now I got to sign it. All right. Now I'm gonna configure a couple things. I'm gonna add my user. I'm gonna change the root password and add a custom banner. This first Puppet run is basically downloading fact stuff, fact scripts. So you can see you just did a bunch of stuff. The stuff in white is like, you can see added, changed the root password, it made a group called BSides, it added my user right there, my SSH key, etc. So let's log out. Now I should build SSH right in. Sure did. And made my cool BSides banner. So, I mean, little things like that make Puppet awesome. This thing, you had 500 servers, even, you know, regardless of the MOTD, but, you know, any config file, your sudoers. So, sudo, this is one thing I added. Oops. So I have a BSides file now in SE sudoers. Puppet put that there, and it actually put me in the BSides group. Oops. See, right here. Simple things like that. You wouldn't believe like how much of a headache adding 5 or 6 users to 400 and some Linux boxes really is, until you use Puppet and you're like, wow, man, my life is simple now. So I actually created some other stuff we're going to go through a little bit. So I'm actually going to build a sensor, kind of like a basic sensor, like a snort. It's going to run snort, or have netsniff, ng, and bro. So I created a bunch of kind of manifests last night that will actually perform these duties for me. Let me get into my environment. So you remember when I said Puppet's modular? There's a bunch of modules I put on here. I wrote most of them, pretty much all of them, except a couple. Standard lib Puppet wrote. And a lot of these modules too, other people write, and you can get them from the Forge. Like I told you in the beginning, where I wrote modules and published them to the Forge. You can basically Puppet module install the name, and it'll just install it. Works really well. So a lot of people will do this. They'll make like a profile directory, and they'll kind of use that for like configuring everything. So I want to make a web server or a sensor. I'll do it all right here. I have a few directories. In most modules, you have a manifest, a files, and a template. Files are for raw things. Templates are for like the ERB ones where I said like I want to have some Ruby code in there that can change something. And then the manifest is the Puppet code. So in the manifest, you can see I have a few directories right there, and my little B-side files. So currently, I'm using BSides PP. It has nothing in it. It just says my interface is ETH1. So we're going to change this to BSides 01. And I'm going to do this with Hyra, I was talking about earlier. Let's get this one. Is that big enough for you guys? I can probably increase it. Bigger. Is that better? Yeah. Try this one too. Actually, do this. So this is the Hyra data file that was in that config file I showed you earlier, which is so I have my one node file, so to speak, and it's a YAML file basically. And you can see I'm basically that class's profile BSides. It says I'm including a module that's called profile, and it's a submodule called BSides. So if I go back over to here, just thinking, there it goes. So you can see env BSides, then after modules, the directory profile is actual the main module, and then if I cat the BSides 01, this is the submodule. So in this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to encrypt my awesome directory because it's got awesome stuff in it. So it's actually going to be encrypted. And you can see the key right here. This is my my passphrase to encrypt the disk, and no one's ever going to guess that one. So, but you might want to use something longer. You know. So Puppet is awesome. But so let me change this to BSides 01. Show you again right here. See, it's a dev SDA5 is awesome on my test sensor here. Oh, I'm also doing swap too, but that's no big deal. Might as well. So it should be dev mapper now. it is. So I have it set in the FS tab. You see it's basically being ignored now. So if I reboot, when this thing comes back up, Awesome isn't going to be mounted. And the only way Awesome can be mounted is by the Puppet Master. And this feature is really awesome because let's say you have a sensor at, like say you have you're a consulting company like Vigilant, and we put sensors at customers and we don't want anyone messing with them. Well, Puppet handles everything. Or let's say you're a real big company and you're putting sensors in China. And then all of a sudden, one day the sensor goes down and it doesn't come back for 10 days. And you don't know why. Things make you fishy. You got a bunch of rules and things like on there, your custom brochure scripts and whatever, that shows what you're actually looking for. That could be bad. And the only way you can bring this thing up is with Puppet. And so basically, you can do things like I was saying earlier, with like purging users and things like that. Let's say they, okay, I'm going to take this sensor, I'm going to take it apart, I'm going to break into it and change the root password. The minute they plug it back into the network to get it back up, they're like, oh, they must have something to make it so that mounts it. It's coming on the network or something. Well, you can make it so the first thing that happens is it checks the users. So, oh, root password changed, and also it's set so it can SSH in. Well, we don't want that. Puppet will go back in, disable SSH, change its password, and then after all that, and it's like, okay, everything looks the way I want it. Then, okay, now I'll mount NSM or whatever, mount Awesome. See, no Awesome. Chinese government can't have it. Unless they know my awesome password. A Puppet can do it. And Puppet scales pretty well too. A lot of it depends on how often you set your login, your check-in time. So Puppet's basically like a poll system. So what happens is you have a master out there, he's listening. Your agents will just check in whenever, say you have it set every once an hour, every half hour, whatever you want. Half hour is default. You can do less. If you do less and you have a lot of machines, you'll want a lot of Puppet Masters. And you can scale that out too. I had a pretty big, beefy Puppet Master set up at my last employer. I'm not going to say who it was. A lot of people know who it was, but I'm not going to say. But look, I mounted Awesome. And you remember too how I said earlier, I'm using the exec framework. So basically, I am actually executing a script, because there's a bunch of things you got to do to mount an encrypted partition. And I figured it was a lot easier to have Puppet put a script out there. So Puppet basically copies a script out using a template. So in those parameters over here, you can see I said it's SDA5, the mount's called Awesome, and this is my password. So it fills those variables in my script, and then it executes it. And that's all it's really doing. And then what it does, it shreds the key. So it actually copies the key down. So the key is actually on there for a split second. And then it shreds it when it's done. The key's gone. And there's a thing called file diff. This is something else that's very important for this. Puppet has something called Diff. It does a diff on the files. It can be set up so when you run Puppet, it shows you like what it's doing. So something like this, you would want that turned off. So I have it turned off so you can't see what it's changing. When I did the MOTD, it's the same way. So for example, let's see, MOTD. Oops. There's our MOTD. It's half now. And normally running Puppet like this is just doing it so you can see it. Normally this just runs in the background and runs all the time. It'll check in every, like I said, 40 minutes or whatever you want to set it to. See, it changed it. I can have it so it shows it. And there's other files you'll see that do that. But if you go back, let's see, MOTD. MOTD's back. I'm a big fan of RM-RF because I don't care. Puppet will fix it, whatever I break. I have no problem. So next thing, so I don't run out of time, we're going to speed up a little bit here. So we're going to do BSides 2. A little more prep to get my sensor working here. All right, so I have a tap and it needs to be plugged in to some ports. And let's say I got like a 4-port NIC on my box and I got some guy in some other country plugging this thing in for me. And this makes it flexible, so I can say, well, oh, he didn't plug it in the 2 I wanted. Normally you'd use 2 ports. I'm just doing this for a demo, so I got 1 here. But a tap usually has 2 ports. And what I usually do is then I just bond them together. So in this demonstration, it's got 1 port. I'm just bonding that port for the heck of it. You can see at the top right here, say it's going to be bond 0. So oops. Sometimes that happens. Means I have a typo. Oh. I swear I tested this last night. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, so. So I just also installed a little utility called NIC info that I put on here. It tells me, hey, ETH1's in my bond now. Awesome. So let's go ahead and do the second one. Oops. So I like to use daemon tools to monitor some of my stuff. So I use daemon tools RPM. And the cool thing about daemon tools is Puppet knows how to use daemon tools. Puppet knows how to start and stop stuff with daemon tools. It's great. And then I'm going to install PFring. And then PathMunge is actually a module I wrote to, which is in the Forge. And all that does is say, adds it to the profile. So it's a search path, basically. So it's in your path. So I'm going to take my bender. You can see right here. Oops. Let's go back to the top. See, my bender is awesome bin. And if you notice all the arrows, those are ordering. So I have to have my stuff mounted with my Crypt Keeper module before it will make my bender, which is going to be in daemon tools, and daemon tools does all that. So. So 1, 2, 3. I know sometimes it's like watching grass grow, but I think it's really cool. Especially when you watch it change something for you or build something. It would be really cool if I just did the last one and then I'd walk away and, hey, it's all done. But they're all in steps, so. Normally, you just build it all together. Like I'm basically going through steps on each of these modules. So 01, 02, 06 would be the final module, and it's everything. You can just run that normally. But you see, it's changing a bunch of stuff. It just installed daemon tools. I called my daemon tools process NSM. It's all PFring. So let's reboot. Just for the heck of it. So that PFring just loads. I don't have Puppet actually telling it to start it, to actually ensmod it. It just does it on boot. Normally when I do a full sensor, I just install it and then reboot it and then it's all up. Done. So this is like one of the tiny steps. All right. I mean, there's a PFring status, right? Nope. Just kidding. Know why? Awesome's not mounted. So generally what I'll do is I'll use NSM for all my logs, and then I don't actually really call it awesome for my configs, but I thought it'd be cool for BSides. But you can call it whatever you want, you know. I think that's a good way to do things. And you can actually encrypt NSM. If you have a 15 terabyte partition and you want to hold all kinds of PCAP and you want all that encrypted, go ahead, let Puppet do it. Then you get nothing if you steal that box. So, PFring status. Looks like it's working. Anyone ever compile PFring? This is much easier. So, actually, I built the RPM to begin with. So, they actually have RPMs now, which is so much nicer. When I first started doing it, NTOP didn't offer any RPMs. I still don't use their RPMs. I'm one of those weird people who like to make their own RPMs. Doesn't everybody? So, PFring is loaded. So I actually, I broke snort a little bit on this test one I was doing. So I'm not going to load snort with PFring, but I will load bro with PFring. Because bro's cooler anyway. Don't tell the source fire guy that said that. And they both have their place. All right. You can see our little manifest is getting a little bit longer. PFring, daemon tools, now here's snort. So, you keep seeing these classes like this. I actually have module. I have a snort module, and this is how I'm calling the snort module. I really don't have enough time to show you how I wrote the snort module or the bro module or things like that. Take a Puppet class, learn it, or just learn on your own. But it's definitely worth learning, trust me. So I wrote this snort module, and I say I'm going to bind it to CPU 1, which actually says I'm not going to use PFring, and I don't care. And I'm going to put it in, it's going to run as the owner snort, and the group BSides, and my daemon tools title is called NSM, and I have a bunch of other variables for service directory and all that stuff, which is at the top. So let's run Puppet. See if it installs snort and turns it on. Oops. Yes? Okay. I only got one more, so. All right, snort's installed, it's running. Yeah. We're detecting bad guys. I got some ET rules loaded. I can do something, remember I told you before? So like, let's go to my awesome directory. This is where I saw snort configs. There's snort. Let's say, like I said earlier, let's say I want to change this to whatever. I'm going to change this to 70 and whatever. And I just did it across, 30 sensors or 50 or 1,000, whatever. I mean, to be honest, if I had one sensor, I would probably still use Puppet. You can see, remember the whole notify I was showing you guys earlier? Notify service. So it notified service snort. Snort restarted. It's like, oh, something changed. I need to reload this. I got new rules or whatever. You can make it trigger on anything. I can make a file that says, Pananen rules, and if it changes, snort restarts. Easy enough. So So 5 wasn't too exciting. All I was going to do was add NetSniff. So we'll skip. Go straight to 6, since I'm running out of time. And I want to show you one other thing. So we're going to install Bro and NetSniff NG all at one time. Oh, I know it's crazy. So let's see if Puppet can handle it. All right. So the Bro module, I actually had to write a wrapper for Bro control. Bro control can take a long time sometimes, depending on how many processes you have. Like, let's say you're running, you're running with PF ring, and you got like 8 Bros going, and it could take a little while. So I wrote a wrapper and I call it What's Up Bro, and it basically is like a cache file. It will. I actually have, so I have the Bro cron. I have a modified Bro cron too that wraps around the original Bro cron, and it will actually check What's Up Bro every 5 minutes and write its status to dev SHM. And What's Up Bro was what Puppet checks, is just a cache file. So it can be off. So let's say I have, let's say Bro broke in the last 1 second. Well, that file says it's running. Not a big deal. So you might be off for a minute. For 99.9% of the time, you are good. Because all Puppet has to do is read that file, and if it says 0, it's like, okay, Bro's running. If it says 1, it'll try and restart Bro. So, for example, Bro is running. 0 is it's running. Normally I'd put all this stuff in PAS, and I didn't do it for my lab. Just look, it's running. And you see I got 2 Bros. Bro's running in PF ring. Pretty awesome. All right, so let's say I stop Bro. So sudo what's up. Oops. I'm just pretending Bro. We're going to pretend Bro crashed for some weird reason. Not that Bro ever crashes. Puppet doesn't let it crash forever, though, that's for sure. Those are just scripts that basically I wrote that will go out and create directories for PCAP to hold. It will clean them. You can set a very different size. Say I want 50 gig free on my disk. It will delete it until there's 50 gig, etc. for PCAP. The reason you store a lot of you'll want your PCAP is good for investigations. So you see that this thing got compromised, and then you can see like, did it do something else? In case you guys don't really know the whole thing about NSM. So you can see what's up, bro? Service schedule refresh. Oops. Let's just do this. Oh, it's got a log. Done. All right. So that's pretty much it. Bro's running. We have a whole sensor, and we just built it with Puppet. If you have any questions, you can.
Run ahead. Go down the hallway for questions.
Yep.